President's nominees. We welcome you, we welcome your families, welcome everyone who's come to listen. We're glad to have you here. And the way this will work is I'm going to make an opening statement. I'll then yield to the distinguished ranking member to do likewise. And after that, we will hear from each of the nominees, and we'd request you keep your remarks to about 5 minutes. If you have more than that, we're more than happy to include those in the record. Then we'll open it up to a round of questions. With that, thank you to all of you and to your families. The families play an important role here. We all know that, and their support is obviously important to everyone. So let's start, Mr. Wyland. Your job is an important job. The trans criminal organizations and their money laundering and the trafficking they commit pose direct threats to our communities and undermine international stability. As Assistant Secretary for International Narcotics and Law Enforcement, you have a real opportunity to help our foreign partners dismantle these groups. I'm grateful that President Trump is redoubling efforts against TCOs, including his recent actions in the Caribbean and international cooperation. Excuse me. Which will significantly improve the success of these and other measures. I hope to hear how you will ensure your Bureau plays an active role in strengthening cooperation with our allies in the Western Hemisphere. Something. Ms. Wicks, this year marks the 30th anniversary of the establishment of diplomatic ties between the U.S. and Vietnam, and our economic and diplomatic relations only continue to grow, most notably with President Trump's recent trade agreement. However, even as the U.S.-Vietnamese relationship grows, Vietnam has continued to strengthen its relationship with China and Russia. Vietnam's defense and energy cooperation with Russia is particularly troubling as it contributes to funding Putin's war machine in Ukraine. I'm looking forward to hearing your thoughts on this issue, as well as your plans to boost U.S. commercial diplomacy in Vietnam in the energy sector. Additionally, as you know, this committee has passed a large number of nominees this year, and I want to thank you for your work to make that possible. Mr. Lojgero, as Ambassador at Large for Counterterrorism, you will be charged with helping protect Americans from terror groups that look to harm us and other innocent communities around the world. Sadly, the previous administration's failed Afghanistan withdrawal and open borders have put Americans at risk. The tragic November attack here in D.C. was a reminder that Afghanistan continues to serve as a terror haven to groups and inspiration to individuals who wish to harm Americans. We must do everything we can to prevent future violence. At a minimum, we should ensure terrorists do not get hold of U.S. taxpayer dollars to fund their terrorism. This is why my colleagues and I have tried to pass the No Tax Dollars for Terrorist Act. You have been nominated for a very difficult but important job. Afghanistan is not the only source of radical Islamic terrorism. Al-Qaeda and ISIS run rampant in the Sahel. Al-Shabaab and the Houthis cooperate around the Red Sea. And Syria and Iraq remain difficult on this front. I look forward to hearing your plans for bolstering America's counterterrorism capabilities. Mr. Meyer, since Sri Lanka's economic and political crisis in 2022, the government has made substantial progress on reforms. If Sri Lanka continues down this path, the country will be well positioned for U.S. private sector investment and enhanced diplomatic relations. Yet, like Vietnam, Sri Lanka has pursued closer ties with China, as it seeks to draw foreign investment, and China's influence over Sri Lanka's critical infrastructure, military, and energy sectors is concerning. I understand Sri Lanka is learning their lesson. I hear that they're interested in finally breaking free of China. I look forward to hearing your goals for this role, if confirmed, as well as where you plan to push back against China's influence in sectors that could undermine a free and open Indo-Pacific. With that, again, thank you to each of the nominees. Thank you to your families. And I'm now going to turn it over to the distinguished ranking member who does better than I did, hopefully.
Well, my voice may be a little better this morning.
Thank you.
But thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning to our nominees. Thank you all for your willingness to serve, and welcome to your families and supporters who are here. Mr. Chairman, I want to begin, though, while we have members of the committee here, by expressing my concerns about those on social media who are targeting staffers of this committee for work in ways that are not even accurate. I hope that we will all push back against efforts to target anybody who's working for this committee. It's one thing to target us, we are public figures, but to target staffers in ways that are detrimental, I think, hurts the committee, hurts our operations, and is not acceptable. And given the environment of political violence that we're in, I think it's particularly troubling. So I hope that everyone will push back against those kinds of remarks on social media.
I agree with that. We're certainly legitimate targets, bigger targets, and we think they'd want to go there, and we can take it.
Thank you. Well, I'm particularly pleased that we have 3 career diplomats before us today. However, of the 91 nominees that we've processed this year, only 10 have been career nominees, and yet we have 85 posts without Senate-confirmed ambassadors. And we're seeing natural disasters, terrorist attacks, political instability grow around the world. And it's not in any American's interest to leave our embassies overseas without the appropriate leadership, so we need to do better. One of those vital posts is the Bureau of International Narcotics and Law Enforcement. INL works to help foreign police dismantle fentanyl labs, strengthen foreign courts to keep violent criminals from fleeing to the United States, and disrupt money laundering pipelines that fund gangs that threaten American neighborhoods. Mr. Wyland, I imagine that you would agree that these efforts are all in our national interest. And yet the administration has fired 40 employees at the Bureau, cut more than 200 programs, and wants to slash the Bureau's budget by 83%. So, Mr. Wyland, if confirmed, how would you continue to protect Americans with such drastic cuts to the department? And is it Mr. Lojgero? Lojgero. I have the same concerns about the efforts that fall under the post that you're nominated for, the Counterterrorism Coordinator. I'm pleased we're considering a career public servant with a long track record for this critical post. Among other responsibilities, the Counterterrorism Coordinator's work includes training foreign partners to stop ISIS and al-Qaeda recruiting networks, cutting terror financing pipelines that try to enter U.S. financial systems, and tracking terrorist plots overseas before they target Americans at home. Given that the administration cut the Bureau by more than half in its reorganization over the summer, if confirmed, I want to hear how you'll make up for those cuts. Ms. Wicks, China's influence is a major challenge in our mission in Vietnam, as you know, the post you've been nominated for. I hope you will speak about how, if confirmed, you would work to expand semiconductor supply chains to reduce American dependence on China, and how you would counter Beijing's maritime coercion that threatens global shipping. Finally, Mr. Meyer, if confirmed as ambassador to Sri Lanka, how will you support disaster relief efforts in the wake of the recent cyclone, given the dismantling of USAID? The United States' retreat from humanitarian and basic relief efforts not only leads to serious human consequences around the world, it creates a vacuum that China and others are not only eager to fill, but they've already begun to fill. On a related note, Mr. Chairman, as you know, I'm very concerned about the inability to deliver timely food and nutrition assistance globally. Congress has set expectations in the Food for Peace Act and in annual appropriations bills that sustain life-saving food assistance. But 14 of the 16 programs have been cut. And this gap has real strategic and political consequences, not just around the world, but for our farmers here at home, because food insecurity drives migration and conflict. These are serious challenges. I hope we can address them together on a bipartisan basis, and I look forward to hearing from our witnesses today. Thank you all.
Thank you very much, Senator Shaheen. Let's hear from our witnesses now. Again, if you'd keep it to about 5 minutes, and we'll be happy to include anything you'd like in the record beyond that. So, Mr. Wyland, let's start with you. Senator Cornyn wanted to introduce you. When he gets here, we'll let him introduce you. I'm sure he has nice things to say, but in the meantime, why don't you take it?
Good morning. I'd like to thank Chairman Risch and Ranking Member Shaheen for holding this hearing. Since you've already heard from so many nominees this year, I'll stick to one idea that Republicans and Democrats agree on, and that is brevity. I'd also like to thank President Trump and Secretary Rubio for entrusting me with this nomination. It's a great honor to serve a country that I love. I wouldn't be here without those mentors and role models who instilled in me from an early age a strong sense of civic obligation. Those are people, first and foremost, like my parents, my mom seated behind me, and my dad watching from home. But the mentors also include people like Senators John Cornyn and Lamar Alexander, Judge E. Grady Jolly, Ambassador Mary Ann Glendon, and the monks and lay faculty at Cistercian Prep School in Irving, Texas. Finally, I'd like to thank my wife, Carol, my Aunt Ann Wyland and Uncle Stu Sides, and my young children, Jay and Bridget, who are in the audience. My kids actually are a good segue because when I think about the job I've been nominated for, I try to keep young people in mind. Inside the Bureau of International Narcotics and Law Enforcement Affairs, my colleagues at the State Department see two parallel troubling patterns. First, adolescents abroad, some as young as 12, 13 years old, recruited by criminal gangs, often online. They soon become adept at using weapons like machetes and M16s. They help sell and move illicit drugs. Second, Americans in the same age bracket, teenagers in places like DC and Dallas and Detroit. They ingest substances that were smuggled across the southern border inside tires or toys. The pills or powders depress their respiratory systems and slow down their heart rates until, tragically, they take their last breath. INL's job is to disrupt criminal enterprises driving both trends. The Bureau assists police forces, border guards, coast guards, and national guards in foreign countries. So you could say that INL is in the business of guarding. And the most important thing it guards is U.S. national security. If confirmed, my mission would be to execute the President and Secretary Rubio's vision of ensuring the safety, security, and prosperity of Americans. That means degrading the capabilities and dismantling the structures of narco-terrorist groups pushing poison into the United States. It also means stemming the flow of fentanyl and the myriad of other deadly substances our fellow citizens are dying from. And it means maintaining America's strategic advantage in the law enforcement space so that our adversaries and strategic competitors don't make inroads in places that are pivotal to our future. This is personal to me. After college, I moved to Mexico, where I saw firsthand what the absence of a durable rule of law looks like. The country is in many ways a paradise, its natural beauty, its culture, the warmth of its people. But when a friend of mine bribed a police officer after a routine traffic stop in Mexico City, the United States and its criminal justice system, for all its challenges, suddenly seemed very far away. Meanwhile, back in Texas, people were dying. Two guys I played high school football with, gone. Their lives vanquished by drugs they may not have even known they were taking. I started to see that not only as a tragedy, but also an injustice. The fact that the cartels often pay no price, that they profit off American customers' weakness, confusion, ignorance, and desperation, that they collude with Chinese chemical brokers whose government feigns blamelessness, that drug traffickers launch their products and thus illegally cross the border into a country that's not their own for the explicit purpose of hooking and harming our fellow American citizens. That righteous indignation, that sense that enough is what motivates me. It's encouraging to say that in certain respects, the good guys are winning. Overdose deaths in the U.S. have fallen of late, which is a credit not only to the U.S. Congress, but also the executive branch officials, state and local authorities, and our overseas partners. But we still have a long way to go before the scourge of synthetic drugs and the narco-terrorist networks that profit from them are permanently kept at bay. That is the effort to which I hope to be able to contribute. Thank you for considering me for this position. I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Wyland. Senator Cornyn, would you care to say a few words about Mr. Wyland?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I know it's a little unorthodox to introduce someone after he's already spoken to the...
Yeah, we're already kind of familiar with him, but go ahead.
But I guess we're used to the unorthodox here in these days. But thank you. I was tied up in the Judiciary Committee, so I appreciate your patience. This is not the first time I've had the pleasure of introducing one of my staff alumni before this committee, and I'm happy to do so again today. It's always a joy for me to see the development and sing the praises of my former staff, and it's impressive to see where they've ended up. Today, I have the pleasure of introducing a fellow Texan, Cart Wyland, President Trump's nominee to serve as Assistant Secretary for the Bureau of International Narcotics and Law Enforcement Affairs. As a Texan, and as he just stated, Cart has seen firsthand the devastation of the drug crisis here in the United States, and paired with his background and experience, I have no doubt that he is the person for this difficult but rewarding job. Cart served as my chief speechwriter from 2017 to 2018, and heaven knows I needed a lot of help. But that's just the tip of the iceberg of his broad portfolio of impressive accomplishments. He earned a JD from Harvard, and he served as a law clerk in the office of Texas Solicitor General Jonathan Mitchell and in the Office of Budget Policy and Planning for then Governor Rick Perry, among other roles within our state that we both call home. After working for me in the Senate, Cart went on to serve in multiple capacities in the State Department, including the Office of Policy Planning and the U.S. Commission on Unalienable Rights, before he went to work for the House Committee on Foreign Affairs under then-Chairman Michael McCall. But there's more to Cart than simply his professional achievements. He has a beautiful family, and his wife Carol may not only be his better half, but ties for the brains in the family, as she is also an accomplished graduate of Harvard Law School. Cart's dad to two young children, Jay and Bridget, who are with us today, I think, over there. A proud Texan and a devout Catholic, Cart credits his education from Cistercian Prep in Dallas for forming him to be the person he is today. Cart goes out of his way to mentor fellow graduates from his alma mater and other young Texans in exile who happen to be working here in what I call the forward operating base in hostile territory known as Washington, D.C. And he has a particular knack for finding Dallasites around town and bringing them together. Having seen Cart's character and commitment to serving his country, I'm sure he'll do great things at the State Department, and I want to congratulate you, Cart, on your nomination, and I look forward to supporting your confirmation. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Cornyn. Well done. Ms. Wicks, let's hear from you next.
Chairman Risch, Ranking Member Shaheen, and distinguished members of this committee. It is an honor to appear before you today as the nominee to be the U.S. Ambassador to the Socialist Republic of Vietnam. I would like to thank President Trump and Secretary Rubio for the trust they have placed in me. I'm joined by my husband, George, and a few close friends. My parents, Gary and Elizabeth Wicks, and my daughter, Kim, are here in spirit. They are watching from Minnesota and Scotland, respectively, as well as other relatives and friends. I'm grateful to all for their ongoing support. I'm also deeply appreciative of my White House and State Department colleagues for everything they have done to support my nomination. I'm a Midwest girl at heart, growing up in Minnesota with public school teacher parents who instilled in me the values of hard work and public service. My government career began more than 31 years ago with the U.S. Army at the Yongsan Garrison in Seoul, Korea, and took me to Hawaii and Fort Belvoir, Virginia. In 2003, I joined the State Department, serving in several offices, before becoming the director of the Office of Presidential Appointments in 2012. There, I have guided and advanced about 1,000 candidates for State Department leadership positions requiring the advice and consent of the Senate and presidential appointment. It's a true privilege to be on the other side before you now. The President and the Secretary are clear about Indo-Pacific's geopolitical and strategic importance, with Vietnam being one of our most important partners in the region. A strong, independent, and resilient Vietnam is in the United States' best interests. Just 30 years ago, our two countries established diplomatic relations, and in 2023, we elevated bilateral ties to a comprehensive strategic partnership. If confirmed, I will advocate foremost for U.S. interests in this vibrant bilateral relationship, focusing on defense and security cooperation, trade and investment, and people-to-people ties. The strength of our military cooperation builds on extensive efforts to address the legacies of the Vietnam War. With congressional support, the United States has partnered with Vietnam to remove 700,000 pieces of unexploded ordnance, provide assistance to 1 million persons with disabilities, and address dioxin contamination in Da Nang and Bien Hoa Air Base. For decades, Vietnam provided critical assistance to enable the repatriation of more than 1,000 American soldiers' remains, and if confirmed, I will support the continuation of these critical war legacy programs. Security cooperation extends to shared interests in regional stability by countering global threats and aggressive behavior in the South China Sea. The second U.S.-Vietnam Law Enforcement and Security Dialogue held in September advanced joint interests and efforts to strengthen law enforcement and disrupt transnational crimes such as online scam operations in Southeast Asia that defraud Americans of billions of dollars annually. If confirmed, I will make every effort to deepen security cooperation and ensure that our efforts are targeted, effective, and aligned with key strategic priorities that benefit the American people. Bilateral trade with Vietnam has grown enormously in recent years, and the opportunity for shared economic growth is significant, yet the current trade relationship is imbalanced. If confirmed, I will promote equitable market access for U.S. goods and services, including technology, energy, and agricultural products, support the development of resilient, diversified supply chains, and encourage Vietnamese investment in the United States. The bonds between American and Vietnamese people are robust. Vietnamese Americans are the fourth largest Asian American population in the United States. Tourism and student programs are trending upward. While this relationship is strong, Vietnam's human rights records continues to be of concern, with reports of harassment, arrests, and convictions. If confirmed, I will urge the government of Vietnam to respect freedoms of expression, peaceful assembly, association, and religion. I will also do everything I can to ensure the safety and welfare of United States citizens in Vietnam and the people serving at Mission Vietnam. Through open dialogue, we will continue to advance regional security, shared prosperity, and our bilateral relationship. If confirmed, I look forward to collaborating with Mission Vietnam's expert team and partnering with Congress to deliver results on behalf of the American people. One final note, my thoughts are with the Vietnamese people as they recover from deadly storms and rains resulting in devastating floods and landslides. Thank you for your consideration of my nomination. I look forward to your questions.
Well, thank you, Ms. Wicks, and our appreciation of this committee, both sides and all of us, for the work you've done over the years on helping us. No one knows better than you that dealing with the appointments and people's issues, past and present, mostly past, can be very challenging, and we appreciate the work that you've done for us, so thank you. Thanks so much. Mr. Meyer.
Chairman Risch, Ranking Member Shaheen, and distinguished members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to appear before you today as President Trump's nominee to be the United States Ambassador to Sri Lanka. I am honored by this nomination and grateful to President Trump and Secretary Rubio for the trust and confidence they have shown in me. If confirmed, I look forward to working closely with this committee to advance U.S. foreign policy interests in Sri Lanka. I wish to express my deepest gratitude to my family, to my wife Karina, our daughters Amelia and Annika, for their unwavering support and optimism throughout our career in the Foreign Service. They are currently at our posting in Oslo and have met each of our moves, as well as my long absences, with endless love, resilience, and grace. I'm also profoundly grateful to my parents, who are watching from California, for their steadfast and enduring love, support, and guidance, which continue to inspire me every day. It has been an honor and a privilege the last 24 years to serve alongside the men and women of the United States Foreign Service. Our most important duty is to protect U.S. citizens and U.S. interests abroad. If confirmed, my top priority will be to ensure the safety and security of all U.S. citizens in Sri Lanka. First, I want to acknowledge the devastating impact of Cyclone Ditwa and the tragic loss of over 600 people, the hundreds more that remain missing, and the hundreds of thousands displaced. I should also highlight Embassy Colombo's efforts to support Sri Lanka during one of the largest and most challenging natural disasters it has faced. The United States has committed $2 million in urgent assistance and leveraged the United States military's strategic airlift capabilities to support relief efforts. The U.S. response speaks to our strong and enduring partnership with Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka sits astride some of the world's busiest shipping lanes in the Indian Ocean, with U.S. Navy vessels and 2/3 of the world's seaborne crude oil regularly transiting its waters. Its strategic location makes it a focal point for U.S. efforts to promote a free and open Indo-Pacific and counter adversarial influences, including China's growing presence in the region. If confirmed, I will lead government and industry partners to promote and protect U.S. security and commercial interests in the Indian Ocean region. Safeguarding waterways and ports for trade, locking in commercial opportunities for U.S. companies, and supporting Sri Lanka's maritime and economic sovereignty are key aspects of my vision for enhancing our bilateral ties. From the economic and political crisis of 2022 to the recent natural disaster, Sri Lanka is a resilient country poised to become a regional economic leader. In the next year, for example, the Port of Colombo stands to double cargo handling capacity, highlighting the significant and strategic opportunities that lie in Sri Lanka's ports, logistics, and shipping sectors. If confirmed, I will continue to encourage the government of Sri Lanka to adopt economic reforms that improve its business climate for U.S. companies and strengthen U.S.-Sri Lanka economic ties. Sri Lanka's proximity to global maritime lanes also calls for close cooperation in promoting a secure Indo-Pacific region. Our defense and law enforcement partnerships are critical to addressing security challenges, including assisting in disaster relief, countering transnational crime and trafficking, enhancing maritime domain awareness, and safeguarding Sri Lanka's maritime sovereignty and port security. If confirmed, I will work to deepen our shared commitment to an open, secure, and prosperous Indo-Pacific region and foster Sri Lanka's role as an emerging regional security partner. If confirmed, I look forward to leading, developing, and empowering our talented interagency team to implement a foreign policy that makes America safer, stronger, and more prosperous. I also pledge to work closely with you to support our growing strategic partnership with Sri Lanka. I'm grateful to this committee for its consideration, and I look forward to your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Meyer. Mr. Lojgero, you're up.
Chairman Risch, Ranking Member Shaheen, distinguished members of this committee, it is an honor to appear before you today as President Trump's nominee to be the coordinator for counterterrorism and ambassador at large at the Department of State. I am grateful to President Trump and Secretary Rubio for their trust and confidence. If confirmed, I will work with this committee and with Congress to advance administration counterterrorism priorities to ensure the safety and security of the United States and our interests. I would like to thank my family, friends, and colleagues. I'm joined today by my wife, Rhonda, our son, Frank, who is an undergraduate at the University of Florida, and Lewis, who is a high school student in Arlington, Virginia, for their support over the years, including our time together at overseas missions, as well as during my 2 unaccompanied tours in Iraq. I would also like to express love and appreciation to my parents, Dr. Frank Lojgero and Judith Molnar Lojgero, for their support and for raising me to understand that as American citizens, we all have the opportunity to reach our God-given potential in the greatest country on earth. I would also like to thank my mentors and teachers at Boston College High School, especially Nicholas Argento, for setting me on the right path. For over 25 years in the Foreign Service, I have had the privilege of advancing American interests in challenging assignments, usually against a backdrop of significant terrorist threats. I joined the Foreign Service shortly before the September 11th attacks. I have seen our counterterrorism successes through American heroism, courage, and sacrifice, as well as setbacks and lessons learned. The Trump administration is committed to preventing a major terrorist attack on the homeland and has advanced safety and security at home and abroad by implementing peace through strength. The administration's focus is on destroying and disrupting terrorist networks, holding state sponsors accountable, securing our borders, and degrading the capacity of terrorist groups to threaten the United States. If confirmed, I will work with our diplomatic partners to advance the Trump administration's principle that America first does not mean America alone. We have strong counterterrorism partnerships across the globe. I will deepen these relationships to advance American interests and will expand burden sharing by those partners. The terrorist threat we face today is different from what we faced following the September 11th attacks. ISIS and al-Qaeda continue to recruit, radicalize, and encourage their followers across the globe to conduct attacks in their home countries. The New Year's Day attack in New Orleans was a stark reminder of ISIS' persistent reach, capabilities, and ambitions. In addition to the global jihadi network, anti-Semitism and anti-government animus have become significant motivating factors in today's terrorist threat environment. President Trump announced in his inaugural speech that the administration would confront the narco-terrorists wreaking havoc in the homeland and across the Western Hemisphere, and Secretary Rubio has designated 14 cartels and gangs as foreign terrorist organizations. In addition, although Iran has been greatly weakened, Tehran and its terrorist proxies, including the Houthis, Hezbollah, and Hamas, continue to destabilize the Middle East and show interest in expanding their reach to other regions. As we execute President Trump's national security presidential memorandum and exert maximum pressure on Iran and its terrorist proxies, we must remain focused on potential increased Iranian lethal planning globally, including against U.S. officials, journalists, Jewish targets, and Iranian dissidents in the United States. If confirmed, I will perform the role of counterterrorism coordinator in the letter and spirit of the duties described in Section 2301 of Public Law 105-277 to supervise international counterterrorism activities, working within the interagency and with my diplomatic counterparts to advance the Trump administration's policies to keep our country safe and secure. I will ensure that our foreign assistance resources are spent wisely on effective programs to keep America safe, and that every program is thoroughly vetted and reviewed and properly briefed to Congress. If confirmed, I commit to working with you to ensure that Congress is regularly informed and consulted on the Bureau of Counterterrorism's efforts to advance administration priorities. Chairman Risch and Ranking Member Shaheen, I appreciate your consideration and thank you for the opportunity to appear before you today.
Well, thank you very much. We'll start with a round of questions here by the members. I want to start, Mr. Meyer, with you, focusing on Sri Lanka for a minute. You know, what the Chinese did to Sri Lanka with their port has become a poster child around the world for why people shouldn't do business with China. It appears that Sri Lanka has learned its lesson from that, pretty bitter pill to swallow. You in agreement that they're trying to move away from China? Is that your perception also?
Thank you, Senator, for that important question. We have a very open and transparent relationship with Sri Lanka, and bilateral relationships should be open and transparent. And if I'm confirmed, I look forward to working with the government of Sri Lanka to ensure that they assert their sovereignty, and that includes over ports. As you mentioned, the Chinese constructed a large port in Hambantota, so it's essential that we work with Sri Lanka and that includes in security cooperation and other areas.
Well, the Chinese hooked Sri Lanka with the money, obviously. That's what it's usually all about. You think they've learned their lesson on that? I mean, they took terrible advantage of the Sri Lankans.
They did, and I believe they have. Sri Lanka has expressed interest in working closer with the United States. One of the things that we have been encouraging them to do, and if I'm confirmed, I would do so as well, is that they continue along their path and commitments in their IMF program, because economic sovereignty and independence is important as well. And if they can stick to their reforms, this will also create opportunities for increased U.S. investment and companies to invest in Sri Lanka, which will again strengthen our ties with Sri Lanka.
Thank you. Mr. Lojgero, your portfolio is probably as big and broad as anybody sitting here, and a difficult one at that. As we've continued to squeeze, particularly ISIS, up in the Syria, northeast Syria region, more and more ISIS has migrated to the Sahel and that area. And it's apparent that to do business in the Sahel, to squeeze them, to go after them, even to operate there, is not only complicated but pretty dangerous for America. What are your thoughts on that? What are your ideas about pressing forward in the Sahel?
Mr. Chairman, thank you for that question. And you're absolutely right. Broadly, we've had success against ISIS, defeating the territorial caliphate in Syria. We also have taken decisive action and working with partners to address the threat of ISIS Khorasan in Central Asia and with Afghanistan and Pakistan. With respect to the Sahel, we will always take decisive action to protect American interests. I think the Sahel is an area where we have to focus on burden sharing with our partners in the region and also burden sharing with our European partners. When we share risk, we need to share burden, and we also need to share resources. We are building, and we have built over the past few years, relationships with the littoral states, with Cote d'Ivoire, Benin, and Togo. They are all facing threats from al-Qaeda affiliates and also from ISIS. And we're going to look forward to developing additional relationships. Certainly, if confirmed, I will do that. And then with our European friends, this is, frankly, geographically more proximate to them, and I would expect that we can advance more collaboration and partnership with partners from the European continent.
I appreciate your thoughts on that. Senator Shaheen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Wyland, as I identified in my opening remarks, there have been a number of cuts to the INL Bureau that I think will have a significant impact on the work of the Bureau. So can you talk about how you will continue to effectively operate given those program cuts and the number of dealing with a budget that's 80% less than in previous years?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you for that question, Senator Shaheen. And before I get to your answer, I wanted to commend you on what you've done in New Hampshire regarding reducing overdose deaths. You know, one thing we often point to is overdose deaths across the U.S. falling right now. But that's a little bit more complicated than that, because in certain states it's rising quite drastically. In other states it's falling precipitously. In New Hampshire, over the last year, meth and fentanyl overdoses declined by 17%, which is a testament to everything that you've done, as well as folks on the local level.
Well,
as
thank you. Let me just comment on that, because I think you're right, but it has been the result of more than 10 years of work at the state and local level with federal support from treatment and recovery programs, from making sure that Narcan is available to people throughout the state, working with law enforcement, with schools, with mental health agencies. So as you know, it's really requires a comprehensive approach, and that's one reason I'm concerned about the lack of the loss at INL of support staff and programming.
Yes, ma'am. I understand your concern, and I think what the president's budget, which of course came over to you all and which you all will deliberate over and make your own decisions on, I think what the cuts you're referring to forced INL to do is to take a hard look at its programming. I think over the years, there's been a temptation to just slap the counter-narcotics label onto programming and just assume that the programs are effective. And you know, what we saw in the early days of this administration when we started scrutinizing programming was that oftentimes our own internal analyses showed that these programs were ineffective. And so what we tried to do was to streamline, to cut where we just weren't seeing the results that we needed to see, and then obviously to continue to fund the programs that we thought were most effective.
One of the other areas that INL has done very good work has been with Ukraine and helping to address corruption in that country and to work with their civilian security and law enforcement organizations. And I support that excellent work. But again, I was concerned that there were real cuts to the rule of law programming. And can you speak to why that is and how you can continue to ensure that U.S. supports anti-corruption work there?
Yes, ma'am. I think the first priority of President Trump when it comes to Ukraine is to end the war and to stop the killing. And so what we've done with INL, or what the INL Bureau has done since the beginning of the administration, is to continue to fund hard security programs, like, for example, the mobile firing teams that are so pivotal in preventing attacks on civilian infrastructure in Ukraine. So that takes a variety of forms, but ammunition, weaponry, you know, armored vehicles and the like. So all of that has continued. We're also continuing to fund some of the entities like NABU and SAPO, which are the investigative and prosecutorial entities inside Ukraine that are, you know, taking a hard look at corruption internally and that are so pivotal to ensuring a fair playing ground for American businesses that are operating in the country as well. So I think that the corruption and the hard security programs have continued. One area that I think may have been scaled back slightly is, for example, in the war crimes area, and that is a result of our conversations with the Europeans. The EU and the UK are both eager to take on more of that burden. And so, you know, as a result of those conversations, we found it prudent to not be duplicative and redundant of what our partners were doing.
Well, I'm glad to hear you're still committed to those efforts. You were the senior bureau official at INL when the Trump administration negotiated a deal to send more than 200 Venezuelan deportees to the CCOP prison in El Salvador. There are credible reports of human rights abuses, including torture, sexual violence committed against these deportees. Do you approve providing $4.7 million to El Salvador to continue this kind of deal, taking prisoners and then torturing them?
Senator Shaheen, we have a very productive working relationship with El Salvador under
Well, I'm not questioning the working relationship. I'm questioning spending money to send detainees to El Salvador to a prison where they're mistreated.
Well, Senator Shaheen, respectfully, the State Department is not in the business of deportations. I'd refer you to DHS for anything regarding that. What we did send was, as you alluded to, $4.7 million to address anti-crime and criminal justice needs inside El Salvador. At the time that I was senior bureau official, none of that money had been spent. The country, El Salvador, is under strict obligations to report on how they're using those funds. There's no indication thus far, as I'm aware of, that any of it has gone to the CCOT prison to which you alluded. But
well, can I get your commitment that if you are confirmed, that you will ensure that there is an investigation into how deportees are being handled at that prison, and that none of our taxpayer money is going to provide support for the El Salvadorians?
I would be happy to commit
torture and terrorism in the prison?
I'd be happy to commit to following up on that with you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Senator Ricketts.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you to all of our nominees here today. Congratulations, and thank you to your families as well, because we know that you would not be able to serve without your family support, and we appreciate your service to our country and your interest in it. The Defense POW MIA Accounting Agency has one of the more solemn duties that our nation provides, and that's bringing home Americans who have not returned home. We saw this commitment again in Da Nang this summer. The U.S. Vietnamese teams conducted a difficult underwater recovery operation as part of an ongoing effort to account for more than 1,500 still missing Americans from the Vietnam War. DPAA's work is carried out in 2 world-class facilities, one of which is in Hawaii and the other one which is at Offutt Air Force Base in Omaha, Nebraska. And it's a deep source of pride for the state of Nebraska to participate in that. When I visited the facility as governor, I saw firsthand the professionalism and reverence that Nebraskans bring to this mission. Families across the country depend on this work, and Nebraska is honored to play a role in fulfilling our nation's promise to those who served. Ms. Wicks, as ambassador, how will you help strengthen the cooperation with the Vietnamese government to support DPAA's recovery mission?
Senator, thank you for that question, and also thank you for the time that you spent with me talking about the U.S.-Vietnamese relationship earlier. I think the war legacy programs, of which what you outlined is one of them, is certainly one of the foundational efforts that led to the reestablishment of our relations 30 years ago. Certainly, if I am confirmed, I will continue to promote and advocate and reaffirm the commitment that other senior government leaders have made to our American people, those impacted by the Vietnam War, as well as certainly our counterparts in Vietnam.
Great, thank you, Ms. Wicks. Further on our relationship with Vietnam, Nebraska is an agricultural state. We're a powerhouse. Agriculture is the heart and soul of what we do in our state. Our farmers and ranchers drive our state's economy, exporting nearly $7 billion in domestic agricultural products in 2024. For Nebraska, trade is the backbone of our economy and the engine of job creation, and a way for rural communities to continue to thrive. The opportunity for my state in Southeast Asia, especially Vietnam, is enormous. Vietnam's imports of American agricultural goods have surged this year, and with corn and soybeans up 35%. And Nebraska beef is gaining a growing foothold among Vietnamese consumers. With the recently announced trade framework, America maintains a 20% tariff on Vietnamese goods while limiting nearly all Vietnamese tariffs and non-tariff barriers on American products. It also strengthened economic security cooperation and includes a $2.9 billion pledge for purchases of U.S. agricultural commodities. With an effective pro-American trade agreement framework, there is no better moment for our ambassador to promote export opportunities for Nebraska farmers. What will you do as ambassador to help get the trade agreement framework across the finish line so that our farmers and ranchers can benefit from it?
Senator, thank you for that question. Certainly, I agree with you that the ongoing negotiations on the trade framework are a very positive step. I look forward to supporting, if confirmed, however I can. Certainly, the specific negotiations are being conducted by the U.S. Trade Representative, and if confirmed, I will do everything I can to support and enable those negotiations to continue and an agreement to be finalized.
So as an ambassador, what kind of concrete steps can you take to expand Nebraska's access to the Vietnamese market for exports, specifically when we're talking about things like corn and soybeans and other agricultural products?
Thank you for that question, Senator. I am aware that certainly we've had a number of delegations, agricultural-based, from different states, to include Nebraska, come to Vietnam. I believe that that is a very beneficial step for that communication and those open channels of discussion to occur between the people on the ground, so to speak, those representing various states, with their counterparts in Vietnam.
Yeah, I actually, when I was governor, I led a trade mission to Vietnam in 2019 when Dan Crittenbrink was the ambassador there, and he did a fantastic job of making connections for us. And I look forward to you doing the same when you were in the role there in Vietnam as well. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Ricketts. Senator Kane.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and congratulations to the witnesses. Mr. Wyland, I want to follow up on a line of questions from Senator Shaheen about budget cuts in the INL realm. And budget submissions are for the President and Secretary of State, I get that. But were you involved in discussions in your capacity at State about the shrinking of the INL budget, about an 80% cut to the division's budget?
I was not involved in conversations about the 80% cut.
Yeah. And so your awareness of the rationale that you described, we were trying to look at programs that succeeded and those that didn't. You weren't involved in that analysis, but that's what you've been told by others who were?
No, Senator, to clarify, I was involved in the review of programming, for sure. I was not involved in discussions with the White House about the overall top-line budget number, but certainly as part of the foreign assistance review that Secretary Rubio began when he took office, I was involved in looking, along with every security and foreign assistance bureau at State, at a comprehensive analysis of our programming, and was involved in discussions with our posts, with our diplomats overseas.
Have I stated it fairly, just by following up on Senator Shaheen, that the budget, I believe, was about $5 billion in December of 2020, 84. The current presidential proposal is an 80% cut of that budget?
Well, the current president's budget request is about 125 million. But
so
that
from $5 billion to 125 million?
Well, sir, the 125 number does not include the prior year funds. We have a pipeline of somewhere between 1 and 2 billion, which we are also able to access.
Let me move on. What's the current status of the Caribbean Basin Security Initiative?
It is, as far as I know, I have not been in the Bureau since June, but as far as I know, INL continues to fund a variety of Caribbean programs, and the administration is quite supportive of that.
Here is a concern that we have that I'll just state for the record, is the administration's commitment to sort of the counter-narcotics effort. Obviously, the military actions in the Caribbean Pacific, potentially against Venezuela, are getting a lot of attention. At the same time, the INL budget has been significantly cut, and the president has pardoned notorious narco-traffickers, most recently Juan Orlando Hernandez, the former president of Honduras. I was a missionary in Honduras many years ago. I have a deep understanding of the damage that he caused to that country, prosecuted and convicted in the United States federal court of leading a narco-trafficking cartel that trafficked more than 400 tons of cocaine into the United States, received a 45-year prison sentence. Less than 1 year into that sentence, the president pardoned him. I know it would normally not be in the State Department's remit to offer opinions upon pardons. That would normally be a DOJ thing. But because this was a head of state, were you involved in any discussions in the State Department about the wisdom of pardoning this individual and what message it might send with respect to our counter-narcotics mission in the Americas?
No, sir, I was not. I do not currently work on Central America issues.
Let me ask you this. Have you been involved at all in the preparation of the national security strategy that the president and his team released last Thursday?
The preparation of it, like the drafting? No, sir.
How about even discussions about what should be in it, particularly with respect to items dealing with the Americas?
Certainly, I mean, everyone at the State Department, my colleagues here, we've all been in discussions of regarding the strategy once it was released. I think when it comes to the Western Hemisphere, the key phrase that I picked up on was enlist and expand. The president has made it very clear that he wants to enlist the cooperation of our partners throughout the region to carry out.
I'm glad you said partners, because a key phrase I picked up was the Monroe Doctrine, which I found very puzzling. The Monroe Doctrine was a doctrine that was not about America's nations as partners. It was about the U.S. dominating the Americas and trying to keep European nations out. You wouldn't mention Little Bighorn in a celebration of Indigenous Persons Day. If you're trying to send a message to the Americas about the relationships we want to have, and you call it a new Monroe Doctrine or a corollary to the Monroe Doctrine, you are starting off with your foot in a deep bucket with nations in the region with whom we have partnerships and others whom we'd like to. Have you lived in Latin America, Mr. Wyland?
Yes, I have.
I thought that was the case, and I think anybody who has probably understands how challenging referencing the Monroe Doctrine is if you're trying to partner with those nations. Mr. Lojgero, I have a question for you. Have you been at all involved in the discussions with the White House about the listing of designated terrorist organizations for purposes of the military strikes? That label is well known, and I know who's on it, but I can't talk about it because what I know from classified. But were you involved in discussions about who to designate as a DTO that might then be subject to these military strikes?
Senator Kaine, thank you for the question. I just want to make sure I understand. You're asking about domestic terror organizations.
No,
Okay.
That's designated terror organizations.
Sorry, thank you.
So just to put it on the record, but to stay clear of classified material, the Office of Legal Advisor at State has issued a legal opinion about the legality of military action against certain groups in international waters. I have deep questions about the legal rationale, but I'm not really asking about that. There is a designation of certain groups that could be subject to military action as part of that legal opinion. And the term that's used for them is designated terrorist organizations, DTOs. And my question of you was, were you involved in discussions about who should be listed as a DTO?
Senator Kaine, no.
Okay, all right, thank you. I yield back, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Kaine. Senator Merkley.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. And Ms. Wicks, I wanted to follow up on, I gather someone asked this before I arrived, about the partnership with Vietnam, particularly over the war legacy projects. I really supported what Senator Leahy had forged in terms of our work to provide DNA help, to return martyrs back to their families, to clean up the remnants of the high contamination at the air bases, to continue to help identify and collect cluster munitions that were left over from the war, and to assist in the treatment of individuals who were affected either by those munitions exploding or by the Agent Orange, those 4 programs. Do you support all 4 of those programs?
Senator, thank you for that question. And yes, all of those war legacy programs that you mentioned are things that I commit to supporting and furthering that partnership as much as I can.
Thank you. I really appreciate it because they really provided the foundation for the restoration of a lot of respect and economic partnership in all sorts of other ways over the Mekong Delta, the development of our comprehensive strategic partnership with Vietnam, in which we would like to see that economic partnership thrive and quite frankly, see a lot of factories that may be located in China right now move to Vietnam. So I thank you. Appreciate that. And Mr. Wyland, you were originally assigned, I've read, to lead the USAID transition at the start of the, is that correct?
My primary responsibilities, Senator, were for the State Department transition team.
Okay. So when Secretary Rubio was here, he said that the weekend that the AID was fed into the wood chipper, that he was very actively involved, canceling some 500 contracts that weekend. Were you involved in that at all?
I was not.
Did this strategy of shutting down AID very suddenly stem from work that you had laid out or a vision you had laid out? Was that a strategy you had proposed or supported?
I was not aware of that strategy.
Until it occurred?
Correct.
Until it occurred. Thank you. So right now, we urge other governments to strengthen the rule of law and follow due process. That's certainly relevant to the position you're nominated for. And yet we've carried out these 22 lethal strikes on suspected drug boats over the last few months, an extrajudicial killing of over 80 people without arrest, without due process, without investigation. How can we expect other countries to respect the rule of law when we're blatantly violating it?
Thank you for that question, Senator Merkley. Of course, I'm not here speaking in a legal capacity, so I can't comment on the Article 2 analysis and sort of the underlying legal questions that you raised. But I will say that I think that if you were growing up, for example, in the Tepito neighborhood in Mexico City, or in Guayaquil in Ecuador, where car bombs are going off right now, or you lived in the favelas outside Rio de Janeiro that were recently raided because of the gangs that control those areas, I think that you'd welcome a more aggressive approach to a persistent problem that these folks have grown up with. And that is the sentiment that's reflected in conversations that I have had with leadership in foreign countries throughout the region.
Yeah, so interesting because actually a lot of folks want us to be able to dismantle those networks, and when the Coast Guard stops a boat, investigates it, finds drugs, provides that evidence, arrests those individuals, interrogates them over the process of prosecution, finds out more information about the networks, they are able to do much more to dismantle those networks than conducting an extrajudicial killing on a small boat in the middle of the Caribbean. So why not do what's legal and effective rather than what's illegal and ineffective?
Well, sir, I think that President Trump has made clear that this is a multidimensional problem. The strikes in the Caribbean are one facet of this, but what INL is involved in is strategic decision-making regarding foreign assistance dollars, and I think that INL, both while I was in the Bureau and since I left, has continued to fund projects and partners throughout Latin America, both in terms of hard security needs and also training and the like, and there's no indication that that won't continue. That's what I'm here to interview for, and that's what I'm excited to continue while I'm, if confirmed.
Mr. Chair, I'll just note for the record that I asked why it makes sense to do something that's illegal and ineffective rather than what's legal and effective. We did not receive a direct answer for that, disappointingly so. Thank you.
Well, Senator Merkley, let me help you out.
Well, Mr. Chairman, if you weigh in on my questioning, I'm going to weigh in on your questioning. Is that fair?
Fair enough.
All right.
Which question you want to weigh in on mine?
It's your turn.
Well, I'm not going to ask any question. Let me state for the record, to be absolutely clear, the President of the United States is determined through legal advice that we've spent hours and hours and hours sitting through, that the attacks in the Caribbean are absolutely, totally, and 100% legal under U.S. law and international law. In addition to that, we have received considerable evidence that in the effectiveness, when he puts $50 million worth of drugs on the floor of the ocean, there are thousands of lives saved in the United States. Those are the reasons for the attacks, and that is what the record should reflect. I understand you have a different opinion on it. Appreciate that, Senator Merkley.
Thank you,
Senator Van Hollen.
Mr. Chair, you said I could weigh in on
Feel
your
free.
point. Thank you. First, it's well understood that the drugs, if they are being interdicted, which is unclear because the administration has no evidence to present to the American public, and if they had it, they'd probably be very happy to do so. But that particular channel is a channel that's used to supply Europe. However, Honduras and Colombia provide the U.S., and the President just pardoned the kingpin of designing the cocaine superhighway to the United States of America that provided over 400 tons of deadly drugs to American citizens. That's hardly a campaign to protect America. It's hardly an America First effort. It is, in fact, doing the opposite.
Well, again, to make sure that the record is clear, I'm the only member of this committee that sits on the Intelligence Committee. I'm the senior Republican and have sat there for 17 years. I can't tell you how or what the methods and means are, but we have seen absolutely, total, 100% conclusive evidence that the boats that were sunk were carrying illegal drugs, and they have wound up on the floor of the ocean.
Mr. Chairman, can you explain why that evidence hasn't been presented to the American public?
Well, it's classified. If that evidence is produced, methods and means, as you know, we collect intelligence through various methods and means. If they're going to continue to do this, and I urge them to continue to do this, they cannot disclose the methods and means, or obviously their efforts will be frustrated.
It's very clear that if there was evidence collected, it would have been
Senator,
bragged about. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Senator, if this is illegal, this is real simple. File suit. You guys do before breakfast every day against Trump.
Oh,
You could
Mr.
file
Chairman, I
something.
hope you've read the Constitution, that the ability to declare war comes from Congress, not
Clearly.
from the President, and the founders were emphatic that the issue of conducting war should never be invested in a single person. And this is a staging that is setting up not just strikes in the Caribbean, but preparation for strikes on land. The President himself has said he intends to conduct strikes on land. He has closed the airspace over Venezuela, and we have not held a hearing in this committee, the Foreign Affairs Committee, on this very important foreign affairs issue. And I'd ask that we do so.
Senator, first of all, you and I have common ground in that only the United States Congress can declare war and participate in the war. This is clearly not a war. It is kinetic action that every president has used over the years without a declaration of war from Congress. Senator Van Hollen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have read the classified legal opinion, and I have to say it's a lot of legal gobbledygook, which I do not think makes the case. But, Mr. Wyland, have you read this report? It's entitled, "You've Arrived in Hell, Torture and Other Abuses Against Venezuelans in El Salvador's Mega Prison." Have you had a chance to read that?
I don't believe so, Senator.
Okay. This just came out last month. It's a report by Human Rights Watch and Cristosal, and it documents torture and abuse of the Venezuelans who we sent to CCOT. It talks about sexual violence, torture, and inhumane prison conditions. Now, I listened to your conversation with Senator Shaheen, and you were part of the State Department team that entered into the agreement with the government of El Salvador to take and imprison these Venezuelans, correct?
I was not involved in any deportation decisions.
The agreement that was signed, were you part of that?
I was involved in a decision to send $4.7 million to El Salvador to address anti-crime and criminal justice needs.
Did you sign the agreement?
I did.
So you signed the agreement. Well, I've got the agreement right here, and it does say that these funds are to be used to help cover the costs of detention in prisons, does it not?
It allows that. It is not exclusive to those.
Well, it anticipates. Are you saying no monies have been used for that purpose? None of the $4.7 million?
To my knowledge, no money has gone to CCOT. There's no indication that.
Have you tracked it? Have you looked at it?
I have not been in the office since June of this year. I cannot speak to what conversations have been had with the Salvadorans since that time.
But you knew there was a risk that these Venezuelans who were being transferred to these prisons in El Salvador would be abused or tortured, didn't you?
No, Senator. I'm familiar with the Salvadoran people's overwhelming support for President
No,
Bukele.
that's not my question, sir. My question was, you knew that there was a risk. Let me just refer you to the El Salvador's 2023 State Department Human Rights Report. Have you ever looked at that?
I am familiar with the Human Rights Report, Senator, but I would just point to internal INL procedures that strictly scrutinize funding decisions. For example, any money that the Salvadorans would like to use, if it's going to a security unit of their government, a law enforcement entity, they have to notify us 30 days in advance so we can conduct lehi vetting. Right. In addition to that, they have to provide extensive financial reporting delineating exactly how they're using that $4.7 million. Right. On top of that, the agreement you just referenced has a provision that explicitly mandates adherence to international human rights treaties and conventions, including the Convention Against Torture.
I can read it. I've got it right here. Thank you. My question to you was, based on the State Department's own 2023 Human Rights Reports, which says that there are harsh and life-threatening prison conditions in El Salvador's prisons. You knew that there was a risk that these individuals would be tortured, did you not? Did you think there was no risk they would be tortured?
Senator, prisons throughout the Latin America region can be rough places, just like American prisons can be. In fact, after speaking with Post, I understand
Mr.
that.
Chairman, I want you to read this report that just came out.
I'd be happy.
And then get back to me and say whether these are acceptable prison conditions anywhere in the world. Can you do that?
I'd be happy to, Senator.
Because you keep referencing what the agreement says, and I've read the agreement. Wouldn't you agree that you have an obligation, the United States government has an obligation to determine whether or not these monies are going for purposes that violate international law or represent gross violations of human rights?
As I said, Senator, the agreements require strict reporting about all the uses of the funds, and I commit, if confirmed, that I will follow up with the Salvadorans to get that information.
But let me ask it this way. You can't contract out your legal responsibilities to the government of El Salvador, can you?
I'm not sure.
You can ask them to report to you, but do you not have a legal obligation under the Leahy laws to make an independent determination of your own as to whether or not these monies are being used in violation of the Leahy laws?
We do. If the money is going to law enforcement entities, we have to conduct Leahy vetting, and I commit to doing that.
All right. Well, it is, the agreement anticipates, as you said, it says it's going to go to help with the prisons. I would just say, Mr. Chairman, this is a very, very sordid chapter in American foreign policy. All of us want to make sure that we deal with drugs running and whatever it may be, but there are many independent reports, as you know, including by the Cato Institute, that determined that many of the individuals who were sent to this CCOT prison were actually in the United States illegally, and that many, many of them had absolutely zero criminal record, and yet they end up in CCOT and get tortured, at least according to this most recent report. And it's unfortunate the United States has been complicit in what I see as a gross violation of human rights. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Rosen.
Well, thank you, Chairman Risch, for holding this hearing. I want to thank our witnesses for testifying today, of course, for your willingness to serve. So I want to talk a little bit about Syria and support for reintegration from Syria, excuse me. So, Mr. Lojgero, there are around 30,000 people still being held at Al-Roj and Al-Hol detention camps in northeast Syria. So far, the Iraqi government has led by example in repatriating approximately 20,000 of its citizens from these facilities. I hope that other countries will follow Iraq's leadership. These facilities have been and continue to be breeding grounds for extremism, radicalization. This is why it's so important that repatriation and reintegration from these camps is done thoughtfully and coupled with de-radicalization programs to avoid creating new CT, counterterrorism threats. So, Mr. Lojgero, do you think the U.S. should play a role in supporting the rehabilitation and reintegration of Iraqis and Syrians returning to their communities of origin?
Senator Rosen, thank you for that question, and it's good to see you again. President Trump took the historic step of recognizing the Syrian government, as you well know, and lifting sanctions to turn the page on the Assad regime, which fell just about 1 year ago today. Over the last 2 years, through some very exceptional, if I may say, diplomacy, the United States and its partners, we've been able to help facilitate the repatriation of maybe about 35 or 40,000.
So you support the rehabilitation, repatriation. So would I have your commitment, if confirmed, to work with me to strengthen CT programming that supports Syrian and Iraqi nationals returning from Al-Hol and Al-Roj?
Yes, Senator Rosen.
Thank you. I have other questions, so we have a lot to talk about. I want to talk about the Office of the Security Coordinator. So, Mr. Wyland, the U.S.-led Office of the Security Coordinator, OSC, plays a key role in the West Bank by helping build the capacity of the Palestinian Authority security forces, by facilitating coordination between Israeli and PA security forces. Historically, INL has administered OSC programming to help build and sustain an accountable security sector in the West Bank that keeps both Palestinians and Israelis safe. So, Mr. Wyland, if confirmed, how would you leverage OSC programming to help achieve mutually beneficial security objectives for both Israel and the Palestinian Authority?
Thank you for that question, Senator Rosen. It's a very important one. I've had the great opportunity to speak directly with General Fenzel, who is the currently occupies the seat, but my understanding is that he's rotating out shortly. I look forward to working closely with his successor. I believe that the PASIF has done some good work in the West Bank with the help of INL. It has, for example, raided Jenin refugee camp and deactivated IEDs, collected weaponry, cash, et cetera. So they've definitely done some good work. And I have no doubt that
Continue to build on that.
can continue. Sorry.
And you'll continue to build on that, because I have another question for you, too, about women, peace, and security implementation, because I have serious concerns about this administration's lack of commitment to implementing the core tenets of Women, Peace, and Security Act. It's bipartisan legislation led by Ranking Member Shaheen and supported by then Senator Rubio. So during your time as a senior bureau official at INL or during your tenure at WHA, have you received any guidance from Secretary Rubio or any other State Department senior official on whether you should continue implementing WPS?
I'm not familiar with any direct guidance regarding that program specifically, but certainly we're under guidance to go after the biggest victimizers and terrorizers of women worldwide, which are the drug cartels and narco-terrorists that operate throughout the hemisphere and globally. And we at INL are certainly, following up on that and using our programming to do exactly that.
So if confirmed under your leadership, will INL fund and implement programs that align with the WPS principles, such as increasing women's participation in law enforcement? And how do you think INL should promote law enforcement efforts to address gender-based violence?
Again, I think the best way to defend and protect women is to continue aggressive attempts to dismantle the criminal networks that operate around the world, and we will use our funds to do that, both through hard equipment and through training programs.
Thank you. I look forward to working with you on that, because it isn't just violent criminals that abuse women across the world. People prey on vulnerable women for many reasons, and we need to address it from all areas. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Lojgero, I want to ask you some questions about the Muslim Brotherhood. The President recently issued an executive order establishing that, quote, it is the policy of the United States to cooperate with its regional partners to eliminate the capabilities and operations of Muslim Brotherhood chapters designated as foreign terrorist organizations because their, quote, activities threaten the security of American civilians in the Levant and other parts of the Middle East, as well as the safety and stability of our regional partners. As you know, the President's executive order is part of a broader bottoms-up strategy to designate Muslim Brotherhood chapters and then evaluate designating the global Muslim Brotherhood. I've been pushing such designations my entire Senate career, and I strongly support President Trump's efforts here. If confirmed, you would be responsible for helping to implement, enforce, and expand his directives on the Brotherhood. Let's begin very basically. Describe your understanding of the role that the Muslim Brotherhood plays in promoting violent jihad.
Senator Cruz, thank you for that question. And I think we have a historic opportunity to work with you, with your team. If confirmed, I will certainly do that to address the Muslim Brotherhood. I think we're 100% on the same page to get at your question about the Muslim Brotherhood. What we've seen over the years, of course, over decades, and as Secretary Rubio said, we have concerns with the Muslim Brotherhood. We have concerns with their support following especially the October 7th attack, concerns with activity in Lebanon, in Egypt, in Jordan, and that's the basis for the executive order. Now, working with you, I would characterize this as that group as the first step. We will look and continue to look in the Bureau of Counterterrorism. This is our statutory mandate to look for the capacity and capability of making additional designations in accordance with the law. I've read your bill, and I look forward to working with you on advancing our efforts against the Muslim Brotherhood.
Good. Do you believe the Muslim Brotherhood poses a threat to the national security of the United States?
Yes.
Now let's pivot away from the President's executive order to what's happening here in Congress. As I said earlier, And as you observed, I've been pushing to designate the Muslim Brotherhood for more than a decade now. I've introduced legislation to do so in all but one Congress since I was elected. This Congress, I introduced a version of my bill, the Muslim Brotherhood Terrorist Designation Act, that uses the same bottoms-up approach that is in President Trump's executive order. It has bipartisan support in both chambers. Last week, frustratingly, the House version of my bill was advanced, but terminally weakened by the House Foreign Affairs Committee. They took out the designation part of the Muslim Brotherhood Terrorist Designation Act. The Senate should do better, and we should move the full bill on our side. Some public reports and statements have claimed that House members, including House Republicans, did not believe that Congress should have a role in crafting sanctions which are to be implemented by the executive. I find that argument to be specious, and I know the vast majority of this committee does as well. Mr. Lojgero, I and my colleagues have implicit and explicit expectations that executive officials will work with and, when appropriate, even defer to this committee on issues of foreign policy, including sanctions and including the designation of terrorist groups. What is your view of the role that Congress plays on these issues, including on initiatives like mine to designate the Muslim Brotherhood as a terrorist group?
Senator Cruz, thank you for your question. I fully respect Congress's Article I authority in making laws, including with respect to foreign terror organization designations or other types of designations. Whatever legislation is passed, I will faithfully execute if I'm confirmed.
Thank you. All right, final question. One element of this debate that continues to surprise me, and I don't think the American people, even many people here in Congress, I don't think they appreciate the degree to which our allies support acknowledging and designating the Muslim Brotherhood as a terrorist organization. As you know, Jordan, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Bahrain, Kenya, they have all already designated the Muslim Brotherhood as a terrorist organization. These are our allies and partners in the Middle East and Africa, and there's a pernicious narrative that doing the same thing they've done, designating the Muslim Brotherhood, will somehow alienate these partners. Describe how you would work with our allies to counter the Brotherhood's malign activities.
Senator Cruz, thank you for that question. I can say that in a previous capacity in the Bureau of Counterterrorism, I led our efforts to designate the IRGC, get designations of other countries to designate the IRGC, as well as Hezbollah and Hamas, particularly in the Western Hemisphere. That approach, it's pretty intense diplomacy. It requires a lot of legwork. I've talked with our chiefs of mission in the Western Hemisphere across to Australia with respect to that. You saw the news there about 4 or 5 months ago, what Australia did with respect to the IRGC. I would template that, really, and get at the Muslim Brotherhood using that diplomatic approach that is working, and there's more work to be done, let me be clear, with the IRGC and Hezbollah and Hamas. Yep. But I would template that in our efforts with the Muslim Brotherhood.
Terrific. Very helpful. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Cruz. Thank you to our witnesses. We sincerely appreciate your willingness to serve, your appearance here today. And before closing, I'll add any letters of support or otherwise to the committee regarding these matters to be added to the record. I'll also note for the information of members of the committee, the record will remain open until close of business tomorrow, December 12th, for members to submit questions. If you receive one of those, I would appreciate if you get it back quickly. It will help move your confirmation. With that, committee is adjourned.